Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk It Out and Find Out, the podcast where we dive into everything that's on your mind. Join me, your host, Dee Lene, as we keep it real, casual, and explore today's trendiest topics. Whether you're looking for solutions, insights, or just a little inspiration, this is the space where curiosity meets conversation. So, today I have a special guest on the show. We're going to be talking about perspective on women in leadership. Chandra Brubaker has been working in corporate America for how many years?
More than 25.
More than 25. Mm-hmm. And of those years, how long would you say you've been in leadership roles?
25 years.
Wow. That's epic. Okay. So she's been within corporate America in the IT within IT for 25 years, and she's been leading in that industry. Very male dominated, like most industries. However, she's been in that role and been able to just make her way. And so what we want to talk about today is her journey with that and just her experience and the objective that we're looking to build here or to present to other women. We're trying to help people to understand or just to relate and maybe pick up some pointers on how they can adjust whatever within leadership. I think Chandra has done a tremendous job. I've worked with her on some projects, and she's done a tremendous job with just being in leadership and being a person who is net neutral, but just also letting her voice be heard and understanding what she needs to do in order to be a leader, but also be someone that is spearheading or doing things to lead the way for other women leaders. So the first question we're going to get into, well, first of all, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
She's actually my first interview, and I've had 6 episodes. You guys have supported me. I'm really happy to, have you guys listen in. This is just something I do for fun. I do it because I like it. I do it because it inspires me. And believe it or not, I listen to my own podcast, and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling this way today. Let me pick a topic. So it's really like a healing for me. But I'm glad to help other people if it inspires someone. So Chandra is on here. And what I did was I sent out some topics to friends, colleagues, and I wanted to just discuss like their experience. And so this was one that she's just worked really hard to do, and I wanted to see where her point of view was. Again, thank you for coming on the show and sharing your thoughts with me. I have a list of questions that I'm going to ask you, and one of the questions I want to start out by asking, what inspired you to pursue a leadership role? And I want to say, think about it, but the reason I'm asking that is because I have no desire to be in a leadership role of the type of leadership role you're in. And I don't envy you at all, but I want to hear about it though. I want to hear about it, but I don't envy you. So I want to understand what inspired you to actually pursue that.
Thank you for having me. I much appreciation, gratitude that you would pick me to come on and express and share some of my experiences and thoughts. So thank you for that. And what inspired me to get into leadership? I just have to go back to me being a kid. I have 2 brothers, and one older brother and one younger brother. But I've always managed to control the room at some point. And so leadership has always kind of been rooted inside of me, I think. And it's not as if that is something that I was pushing to do. So there's a whole lot of things in my life that occurred that actually spearheaded me to that direction. So yeah, that's okay. What I would say about leadership.
So within those roles, one of the things that I really like, because I've been able to see you in action and actually see you work with your teams. And I remember one time we were talking, or not even talking, I happened to be around and I experienced you talking to your team. And it was one of your team members that was, or well, not even team members, one of your subordinates that was there. And you were like, you referenced the person and you was like, this is my team member. And I'm like, but she worked for you, but you refer to them as your team member. And I thought that was really cool because I knew that the person worked for you, but you referred to her or him as your team member. And I want to get your perspective on that. Like, what's your mindset about that?
To me, it's like sports, and it's like any other type of median. I think of orchestra and somebody leading the orchestra. That person has to see everything from all angles, but you also have to get inside of the work. And I just think that it's not necessarily the title that really matters as much, because if you have to show support. And I want my direct reports to understand that we are a team and we do this together. So when I'm referencing anybody that works for me, they are my team member. And I think it brings a better bond in the team, because the team understands that me as a leader is not just holding this title. I'm actually going to help get us there and lead the way as well.
And being a professional, I will say, working in corporate, being a professional, working in the same industry, I would say that is a good approach. I think that I've worked under many leaders on your level, and the one thing that helped me to work better, smarter, harder, was knowing that this person, number one, believed in me, mm-hmm. and understood my strengths versus my weaknesses. Because what happens is, if your leader presents something to you and makes you feel that you're not good enough to do something, and they just kind of are nonchalant, and it is to me, and I'll get your thoughts on this, to me it is the responsibility of the leader to say, I want to understand you from day one. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And I think if you have these certain approaches where you can come in on ground level and kind of put yourself in their place, because you started humble beginnings, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so I think that is a good approach that not many leaders have. And I'm going to say many women leaders have, because I think women have a lot to prove. So one of the questions I want to ask is, what was a defining moment in your leadership journey? If you can think of a defining moment, something that happened to you, an example of something that happened to you, maybe in your beginning stages of leadership, and if you had it to do over, let's rephrase that question. It was the journey started, and if you had this one thing to do over, based on this experience, how would you frame that? So let's start by saying, is there a moment in your journey from which you started that something happened where you were dealing with upper management, somebody that was your superior, and what was a defining moment, or what was an aha moment for you, and would you have done something differently?
Yeah. So many years ago, I worked for a African-American insurance company, one of the oldest insurance companies. And I'm talking over 100 years old. So there was a lot of documentation and a lot of old just way of doing things and systems. The company decided to sell the building that they were in and move to a different building. So it took me kind of outside of my comfort zone, sort of, because it involved building out a space, bringing in the technology, putting in new technology while eliminating the old technology, but also communicating to the staff and everybody else that uses the technology, the change, and pushing them to change. And it all had to happen within a maybe 6-month period. And so that was a defining moment for me, because it was almost like I was just going into something else. You know, some people would take that as being a tall order, but I said, let me rally my troops up and let's just get in it and get it done. All the while, you're having people who are worried about managing a large amount of money, that is afraid that you're going to move these systems over and move our old files, file cabinets that you go in and pull paperwork to digitize all this stuff. I just immediately snapped into project management mode and team. And this is where that team comes into play, because I brought the team together that could help me facilitate this. And you have to let people who are experts help guide you too. You're the leader, but you're also relying on the experts or the subject matter experts to lead you in a way you would like to take the project or whatever the initiative was.
That is a pet peeve of mine, actually. And I'm like that with everything. I'm like that when I go places and I'm on the opposite end of them, and I'm like, somebody says, well, what do I do? I'm like, you're the subject matter expert. Like I leave the matters to the experts. Yeah. And I do expect that if someone is the expert in something, if you are you detail cars, and and you're like, yes, because I use this special soap to do this, and I'm like, no, that soap doesn't work. No, I don't know whether the soap works or not, because I'm not the subject matter expert on that. I just need you to wash my car. You know what I'm saying? And if it's gonna give me some shine, all I know is that it's gonna shine. So I'm big on that. And so even in a corporate situation, the worker bees, they're going to do the work. They basically, a lot of professionals, they know what they're doing. But the biggest thing is delegation. And so when I look at leaders, and we're going to get back on the topic, I think we're digressing to just concentrating on leaders. I want to specifically hone in on women leaders. But Absolutely. I want to say this, because this is just, damn it, this is just how I feel. So I feel like if a person is in corporate and they are a leader, that they should leave those things to the subject matter expert. And even you in your field, and I'm going to touch on being a woman in that field. I remember us having this conversation about when you were in that space. And I remember when you were doing it, and I think that there was some apprehension because you were new. They didn't know you. They didn't know what you could or could not do. And it was like, okay, this is what it is. This is what I'm doing. And I think they kind of came in and they were like, and you look young. So it was like, this little girl coming in here and doing this. And it's so funny how you just kind of came in there and you kind of like rocked it. I watched and I was like, this woman is in this company, and she came in and she moved. And I remember that. And I remember how cool you were. And I remember us having discussions. You was like, I don't know how to do that, but I'll figure it out. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Oh, how you going to do that? He's like, girl, I'm going to get it. I'm going to understand it. They'll be all right. I know. Yes. I have an idea of what needs to happen, and I'm not going to know everything.
And when you brought up team, education is a big thing with me. So and it doesn't matter what school you went to or anything like that, but the education side to me is the ability to learn and pursue new information any time of the day. If I am just understanding that I need to put water in a plant at a certain amount of time because it's that type of plant, then I welcome that type of knowledge from somebody. Mm-hmm. So, and the subject matter experts, they allow me to learn as well. So that allows me to go into different industries, and I know a little bit about a whole lot of other stuff outside of just what I specialize in. And so taking from those subject matter experts is just highly, highly important.
And you're different because, just being let's just say from a general perspective in corporate, I come from an environment where there are leaders who want to do it all. That was like crazy to me. Like, you hire people as subordinates and they're the busy bees, they're the worker bees, and you have to trust that they can do what they want, they need to do rather. And I've come from environments, I was in an environment, just, several, where leaders are like, I just need you to be here and I need you to follow what I'm doing, which is much of nothing. Mm. And I'm like, I like the busy work, but they wanted to do it all. And that was weird to me. So the fact that you're able to understand what your team's strengths are and delegate the work and be able to trust that they'll get it done is amazing, because that is something that is hard. So just bringing it back to women in leadership, I want to talk a little bit about breaking barriers, right? So do you think women are fairly represented in leadership roles today?
Today?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that when we went through the DEIB stage,
And,
it did
and then help us understand, right?
equity and inclusion and belonging.
Okay. Break that down for us a little bit.
Okay.
Just a little bit. Give us a little bit of understanding of what that means, what that meant in that particular situation you were in. Like what was the mission or the goal behind?
I was saying that just the DEIB initiative allowed a lot of women to become chief people.
Okay.
Or chief diversity officers.
Gotcha. Okay, and we understand that is something that was an initiative that brought in people based on the need, right? The need for there to be certain ethnicities within environments,
or just simply equity and fairness.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
And so you're saying that if my company has a DEIB initiative, then we value diversity. We value equity and inclusion and belonging.
Right.
You know, no matter who you are, we support. And I think with the shift after COVID, a lot of organizations actually honed into it and was truly engaged in serving that initiative. And there were some companies that did it because they knew at this time it was the topic of discussion and it needed to be talked about. But I think it did give a lot of Black women an opportunity to be in those, to sit at the table. And that's what we need. We need for our sisters to be able to sit at the table and hear what's going on and make decisions at the top, you know, instead of being just left at the middle and can't engage in the leadership roles.
So I want to ask you this. This is just a curiosity. This is me being curious. So do you think that Black women in leadership roles can relate to other Black women, or they're more qualified to relate to just Black people in general? I'm not going to just say Black women. Do you think that they are more qualified to relate to Black people in general in subordinate roles? Do you think that they're more qualified than maybe other races? Not specifying just one race. I'm going to give you an example because I think that this will kind of bring it home for you to be able to really give me an informed answer. If you have a team of 4 people and on your team you have a white person, an Asian person, and 2 Black people, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think that you as a leader, a woman leader, could relate to everybody? Or do you think that you would better relate specifically to the 2 Black people?
Very good question. There's a lot to unpack with that though, because it depends on where that leader is from, their environment, what they're used to, who they was raised around, who they were brought about as they journeyed through their career, who they was around, who they adapt to, what interests. There's a lot to unpack there. So for me, I could relate to all of them. I really could, because it's a human factor that's important. First of all, there's a human factor. Do I think I would relate a little bit more to the Black direct reports? Absolutely. Just because there are certain things that, you know, Black people do as Black people. There are certain types of dances or quotes that our parents had that we know. There is even a way that we saved our money. You know what I'm saying? That was different based on our environment, based on the things that we had to go through. So, in just being in oppressed situations. So yeah, I do think that I would relate a little bit more, but not a lot.
And do you think it's because of your vast experience in dealing with people within corporate and having to deal with people with leadership and, you know, and I mean, honestly, people within leadership, there is very little presence of brown skin and a very big presence of lighter skinned folks. And it, from my experience and where I sit, because I sit in a different place than you did, I can speak of this from a perspective of a professional that has worked with leadership teams as a support person, right? I may have been in one or two leadership roles within companies, and I didn't like it. So I never revisited it, right? I am comfortable with being a professional and being a subject matter expert. However, the up there, it looks a little bit different. There, I know that there were sprinkles of people, but one of the things that I experienced was, if I saw that color, that brown color on that panel, right, of people in leadership, they were one or two things. Okay, they had to be compliant, but they were one or two things. They were either a person who was going to say, hey, I'm going to look out for you, be, just, look at this, be careful with this, whatever. And they were pulling your coat. And hopefully there was enough about a person not to take advantage of that, right? Because there are some people that will, are cool enough not to push the lever and put themselves out there too much, because they still have a role to play. But then on the other hand, there were those ones that just totally were like snubbing you, right? I've experienced that side of it. It's like, I've made it. You know what I mean? And I am doing well, and I am of the elite.
The elitist.
Yeah. And it always made me feel like they were unapproachable. So we talked about that a little bit in the beginning, and how approachable you are with and comfortable you are with talking with, your team and leading them, but still interfacing with them on the same level and making them feel, making them feel like their presence was appreciated. So what role do you think that mentorship and sponsorship play in helping women advance?
Oh, very, very, very. And let me tell you, I have gone through my career really without a mentor. And, as you get higher, the air gets thinner. It's almost like when you're going upstairs, during the summer, it's blazing hot upstairs. Right. And it's the same way. And sometimes you do need someone to help you maneuver through that thin air. And it has to be someone that can understand your experiences. Like, I honestly, as I drift into more of an entrepreneurship role, I see the value of having a mentor that has gone through these challenges that I've gone through, especially when it comes to race. Because when I do look at these org charts, you don't see very many black faces, and especially black men and black women. I mean, just I've seen maybe 5 different companies over the last couple of weeks, and just looking at their organizational structure, it's just a panel of white men. And so, if it was a situation where they were looking at me to come in and represent a leadership role in that space, it would be great to have a mentor to help me navigate that space, to handle situations a little bit different than I would have in the past, and just help with growth. But it is important. And I think we should have more affinity groups and some open and honest conversation about what we're really feeling in these industries, especially in tech, automotive, finance.
It's interesting. I want to give you my perspective on mentorship. Okay. And just from a professional to a leader, and it's always good to share between, and maybe someone hears me and this helps. So through my career in IT, I never really had a mentor. So I had one that was really, really good, and we just kind of fell into each other, and she was excellent, and it was based on my work ethic. I was working this job, and I just was really working. The reason I was working so hard, because when I got the job, I had really interviewed well, but honestly, when I got the job, I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, But I knew that I had to show and prove, and I had to fake it till I made it. So I got in the role, and there was systems that I needed to learn. And so what I decided to do is stay up all night and just learn them. And I remember my daughter coming up to me, and she said, "Mommy, you still working?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm still working." And I was just up like 1, 2 in the morning, just like, I got to learn this system. I got to understand this, because I done told these people I know this stuff, right? So I had to show and prove, and I did. I did what I needed to do. But I remember going, after that particular role, I had moved on to another company. And I remember working, and I didn't have a mentor. And I kept saying, "Man, I just feel like I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything." And I remember one of my coworkers sharing, "Well, she said, do you have a mentor?" And I'm like, "No. Am I supposed to?" And then right after that, my company made it a mandatory for us to have mentors. It was like, that was part of us getting our bonuses. It's like, if you want this bonus, you got to sign up for the mentor program. You can either be a mentor or you can mentee. Pick one, right? So I was like, I would love a mentor, but I don't know if I just didn't think about that, right? When it became, I thought about it when it became mandatory, which was great.
Right.
So I got a mentor, and how I ended up getting the mentor was, we had a mandatory book club. They made us join a book club. I was like, they just want us to be cultured, right? So we joined the book club, and we would read books that were associated with diversity and things like that. And it would be a group of people, and then it would be leaders leading the book club. And I thought that was really cool. And so it was a lady, and she was a brown lady, and she was leading the book club, and she was talking, and I thought she was amazing, right? And I was like, I like her. And I asked her, after we went through the book club and we all participated, and we were told that the book we were reading was one that was kind of like edgy. Okay. So you could kind of like give your perspective on some things, and it was kind of like, this is how I feel, and it was really how you feel. It could get communicated wrong, and but they were like, this is a safe space, so we all kind of gave our 2 cents and went along. And I love that the leader gave her 2 cents, and when she did, she was so transparent. And so after we finished the book club, I called her up and I said, "Hey, thank you for leading the book club. I loved it. I loved, what I got from it. I loved that everybody was real about what they felt." I said, "But I would love you to be my mentor." And so she says, "Oh yeah, I'll sign to be a mentor." So we talked, okay, and we had our first meeting, and I'm talking to her, and I'm telling her about my leader. And I'm like, "Yeah, he does this, he does that." And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's okay." And I was saying that it was okay because I had flexibility. I had a small child. I was a single mom. I was like, I could go, it comes, I please. It's like, it's cool that he like that. She said, it's not cool that he's like that. And you can have all of that, and he needs to be better. So she was like, this is what we're going to do. So we wrote down everything that we were going to do. And she told me that you need to get out of there. I was like, no, I'm good. She was like, no, you need to get out of there. And I was like, okay. Right? This is a brown woman, and she's like pushing me, and I had never had that before, right? So I'm like, okay. So she says, what I'm going to do is I'm going to meet with your leader, and I'm going to meet with your leader's leader. So she met with my leader, and he said some things, because she was like, hey, I just want to get some feedback on D, and I want to understand what she's doing, what she could do better, yada yada yada. So he came back and he said some things, and I'm like, well, that's not true. I'm like, why would he say that? I was like, he never told me that, So I'm feeling some kind of way, because I'm like, whatever. She said, you know what? I met with him, and I knew he was full of shit. So she's like, I get it. She's like, I saw it. She said, I saw that he wasn't right. You know what I'm saying? She said, but this is what we're going to do. I'm going to meet with his leader. So she met with his leader, and she asked or whatever, and his leader had one point of feedback that was negative, right? Okay. And you ready for this? You ready for the negative feedback that he gave her? Yes. He said, oh, she's great at this, da da da. He said, but there's one thing that she did that I need her to work on. We have a one-on-one that we have scheduled monthly. And sometimes the one-on-one gets scheduled on a Saturday.
I would have had that feedback for you as well. Like, wait a minute.
I said, I'll take that. So she said, girl, that was the only thing he said. She was like, reschedule those meetings and get those Saturdays off of that calendar. Because I felt like if that was the only thing that he had, that's fixable.
That's fixable. Absolutely.
He didn't have, she doesn't deliver on time. She doesn't come to work on time. She's always late to meetings. She's never present when she's facilitating meetings or leading projects, because I had the responsibility to do readouts for financials and projects, and I was dealing with senior leadership people. So I had none of that. You know what I mean? She schedules these damn meetings on a Saturday.
That was good. Like, thank you very much.
We giggled.
Fix that.
And she said, fix it today. So we fixed it. She said, you need me to show you how to do it? I was like, oh, I got it. I can handle it. I didn't realize it was on Saturdays, right? So I handled it and it was done. But my leader, she even questioned him and said, well, this is the feedback that I got from her leader. Her leader said that she XYZ. And you know what his leader said? His leader said, that's not true. I've never experienced her doing that.
Oh, exactly. Wow.
He took my side. You see what I'm saying? So you can get some good leaders. I had a layer. My first layer of leadership was horrible because he threw me under the bus. But my leader's leader had observed that I wasn't that person. Mm-hmm. So in some cases, you can get other people to rah-rah for you. And so I say that I wanted to give you that story because it took a brown mentor to pull that out of me. And she even got me as far as getting promoted, because now that I got that out the way, I was able to get promoted to the next level because she's like, this is what you need to do. Absolutely. And so I wanted to tell you that story because it really seals the deal with the importance of mentorship.
Yes.
Because look at all the things I didn't know.
And it's funny you said that because I'm a mentor for someone else and other people. But, when you start looking at you're a mentor for somebody else. So everything is your way, your thought process, how you process things, how you deal with it. But to be able to hear somebody else come outside of what you're doing and to give you their feedback, just another way, another thought process, that is valuable. Mm-hmm. It is valuable. And I mentored right after that. I said, I think I had like 2 or 3 mentors that year. I had really broke the bucket on mentors. Like I had another mentor that was fabulous. She was another brown girl and she was amazing. And she really honed in and helped me to appreciate like your leadership material. I said, girl, I don't want to be no leader. She's like, you need to be applying for leadership roles. I said, I don't want to do that. And they were like pushing me, and I said, I don't want to do that. Now I can take on more responsibility. I can learn more things, but I was so enthralled with leading projects and being the best project manager I could be, being the best, person I could be within the finance world because that was my background, and facilitating the IT stuff with the finance, and like I was just like heads down. I wouldn't say I'm as much of a geek, but I did like those geeky things. Mm-hmm. I appreciated those things. And so with that being said, I was very definitive around not wanting to do that. I was very clear about not wanting to lead. I've had several opportunities to be in leadership roles, and I just didn't want to, not in those environments at least. So I'm running my own company now, and I'm glad to be an entrepreneur, but that's because I'm doing things my way. You know what I'm saying? And I'm investing the money in my company. I'm doing things my way. If I put the work in, that's what I'm going to get out. And so I never thought that I could do that. Like people think differently, but it is what it is. So, and I want to move on. I'm sorry. I kind of was very long-winded on that, and I apologize for that. So we're going to talk about leadership styles and strengths. Okay. So I think this is a very important area. So do you think that women lead differently than men? Yeah.
If so, how?
Well, we already are like little detectives. We have these little detective senses, and
you mean women?
Women. Oh, okay. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. We.
Yeah, of course. Right. Just try to be clear. Like, which one, men or women? Okay.
But yes, I think we do, because then we also, it's something different that we have different than men, and we are mothers. You know what I'm saying? So there's a nourishing manner about us as leaders as well. So yes, that would be an absolute yes. Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, what are some leadership qualities that women bring to the table?
Empathy. Empathy.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And empathy could encompass a lot of different things. You know, sometimes I think back to when Kamala Harris was running for president. I truly feel that a lot of, and some women probably thought this as well, but men felt that she would be emotional. And when you're dealing with other countries who are male dominant, that emotional side is something that they wouldn't want to show. You know, but at the same time, I think that men show emotion just as much as women do.
You think?
I mean,
I didn't say it. She did. I said nothing. She said it. I thought it. But go ahead.
I do. I think about George Bush during the World Trade Center.
Right.
And I just think about the look on his face. He may not have shed a tear, but he definitely has some emotion behind that. But you know, I think empathy is important. But I think sometimes we also can't get too deep into our feelings as women when you're leading. You have to know when to turn that off. And in some cases, you may have to think like a man and act like a woman. Well, thank you, Steve. But
right. And sorry to interrupt you, but I have my own thought about that. I feel like the climate has changed. I feel like we understand a little bit more about emotional intelligence. And I was having this conversation with one of my very good friends not too long ago about how a lot of men say, oh, we have the ability to turn that off. You know, men have black hearts. We can turn it off. I don't know about that. You know, I think that they internalize it and externalize it differently. I don't think that it's any different than a woman. Women just deal with it a little bit differently. We're probably more vocal, so it comes off like that. But to that point, I don't feel that today that women are any more or less emotional than men.
Well, you know, you just mentioned that the climate has changed. I do see a lot of men that's coming out of the pockets, you know, with emotional intelligence. It is some men out there that don't act in that manner, and I don't know if it's a generational thing. You know what I'm saying? That is a topic. That's a major topic right now on The Wire, and some men are starting to be more vocal. And it could have been that these men were acting as they thought they should,
it's a stereotype.
In a sense.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? But then behind closed doors, then that emotional intelligence come out, and maybe in a personal manner. So,
segue into another question. So, being a woman within corporate and having the responsibilities, sometimes you're faced with the question of balance. And sometimes, you know, based on your emotions, sometimes your emotions may, you know, be a little bit fluctuating and maybe unbalanced. So how do you balance being assertive without being labeled negatively?
I call in sick.
No.
I mean, I'm telling you, because my answer to this, you know, 20 years ago would be different than it is now.
Absolutely.
It's sometimes when my little friend comes around, and his name is menopause.
Right.
When menopause come around, you know, I don't know.
I know that dude too. I know him too. I don't care for him too much, but we cool. We work it out.
You know, but balancing it, sometimes you have to take a step back.
All right.
You know, when those emotional side comes out, I'm kind of wrapped a little bit different than the average woman. So I handle my balancing act a little bit different with my emotions. So I'm not, some has said that my emotions show on my face. I don't know if I quite agree with that, because I play poker very well. And but again, you know, when I'm feeling a sense of I'm just overwhelmed, or am just feeling as if I'm in battle, then I have to take a step back, and I have to reevaluate the situation to move forward.
And I think that's smart. It's what I do personally. I used to get chastised about that. in any situation, I will shut down on it. People would feel like, oh, well, you kind of shut down without saying anything. And I'm like, because if I don't do that, then I might say something that I might regret.
Absolutely.
And I'm the person that has to look in the mirror at myself and live with myself. So my coping mechanism is to do the same thing. And
and sometimes it's not even about me. I'm helping you from what I may say.
Absolutely.
You know?
Right.
And I just, a lot of times I hear my grandmother saying, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say nothing at all. And stepping back gives you an opportunity to evaluate
that one. Look, they have these little things like that now on Instagram. It's like, complete the sentence. I bet you if I said that to my child, she'd be like, I don't know what that I don't know what that means, you know.
Gosh, yes.
But yeah, and when you think about just being smart about things, especially in a leadership role, because you are the example to people. People are watching what you're doing. They're learning from you. And so with all that said, how do you develop confidence in a male-dominated industry? How do you keep your confidence at a certain level? Having to take those mental breaks and having to refrain from saying certain things can be very taxing. So how do you keep your confidence level? Tell me some things that you do interpersonally to keep your confidence, at a certain level. So
let me clarify the question. Mm-hmm. You asked, how do I do that in a male-dominated industry? That was a question?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I do believe that my genetic makeup is different. I mean, I grew up around boys. I hung out with the boys, but I was still girly. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But so it gave me an opportunity to see how men tick. Mm. You know what I mean? Being around my father when he's working on his cars and I'm around them, or I'm at the game with my brothers, and as we aged, they were different because they're maturing, but I paid attention to men. And I use that to this day. And confidence, I think it's not having a full-on imposter syndrome. Like, I don't think I have imposter syndrome to a point where I'm rethinking myself or my ability. It actually makes me dig in. If I feel like I'm being challenged, then I think I get more into this. I'm gonna show that ass. I can show them better than I can tell them.
Yeah.
Yes. So for those that probably didn't grow up around boys like I did, you have to hone into what you know. And guess what? It's okay to not know. You know what I'm saying? I think that in those people that you have to have this courage around, ask. Because I bet you 15 minutes later, you will know. So it is okay.
I think people respect when you're able to be vulnerable enough to ask questions. I believe when people say, I learned early on that there's no stupid question.
I don't know, that might be a lie.
I don't know.
It might be some stupid.
I guess it depends on the person. That's not nice.
Oh, okay.
Depends on the person. We have to meet people where they are, right? Exactly.
And empathy.
Right. Breathe. But so with everything that we talked about, one of the things that is important for us as women is to have work-life balance and the support. And I think today we have a lot more in place for that, especially since like COVID. We're better because now there is some provisions for us.
Like Instacart.
Yeah. Oh, good. Tell me
Instacart. Okay. Thank you, Instacart and Uber Eats.
And Uber Eats, yes.
So times are different.
Yeah, times are different. We have a lot of help and support. So how do you balance leadership responsibilities with your personal life?
Throughout my career, it's been that's been challenging. I mean, I am a widow, My husband passed when my children were 3 years old, and I had to just do it. I had to just do it. And I really, when you think about mourning and things of that nature, I had to pick mourning at a different time because I knew that my children needed me. And so my kids, we had a commute every day, in traffic every day, in sports. And, one of the things that I commanded and demanded as I raised my children was that I would take them to school every morning, and then I would pick them up. And that was very important to me. So, balancing means planning. And for me, organization was heavy. If I wasn't organized, then it was chaos, and chaos throws the entire day off. It throws me off. It throws them off. So I balanced having small kids by training them early, training them to be able to make their lunch at night, separate their clothes and things of that nature. And then I would plan for my next day so that when I came into the office, I didn't have to plan my day then. I would plan my day at night. And it just gave me a kickstart because I'm up early anyway, preparing the kids. But it became like second nature. It became a part of me. I comb my hair, I gotta do this, and I kept order. There were some times where it might be a Thursday night and I'm with you drinking some wine and just couldn't get up at 6 o'clock in the morning the next morning, but still got it done, But it's important because, one of the things that my late husband said before he passed, he said, he's grateful when he wakes up in the morning because you never know when it's your last. And that stuck with me because it's something that he had said. And so, the balancing personal and business, it was more important for me to balance home first and then professional.
And that's a great way to look at it. I think prioritizing your life helps you to be able to prioritize your space within a corporate environment or within an environment where you're leading people, and then it sets the tone for them, and it also sets boundaries for your leaders, because a lot of times people have different thought processes behind what they feel is dedication within a work environment. So how do you feel men can be allies in supporting women leaders? What do you feel what are some of the things that men can do better to form alliances with women in supporting roles? It's loaded. I know. I see your mind ticking. Take your time.
I think men in the workplace, they identify a winning star leader. And I think they got to speak up more. Speak up and allow these women to be in front when they see it. That you need that support system. If there's somebody and you see that she is cutting all the right corners the right way, you need to speak up and let it be known, especially if you're in a place of power. Give these women an opportunity. You see that they're managing everything else that you have them on the beat, say, for instance. But I think that it's very important for them to acknowledge it. There's a fine line too in the hiring process. It's almost like you can't say for this position, we want a woman. Maybe because you have a position and you've had, the door has changed 3 times. And all 3 times it was a man, whether it was a Asian or a white man or a black man, whatever. I don't think we can just say, this position has to be a woman this time. That's a hard one, but I think there's ways around it. You know what I mean? Where you can give a female a try in this position. So that's something we have to figure out how to work around.
Yeah. And we need more leaders like you that are forward thinking, that understand the assignment and can get it done. So what changes do you hope to see for women leadership in the next decade or so?
When I look at that org chart, I would like to see more Black women in these leadership roles. I just think that the world is changing too. I would have thought something a little bit different maybe last year or the year before, but now our climate is changing yet again. So this is going to be something that us as a community has to get and rally around together to help lift each other up. This is going to be an interesting next 4 years. And we're going to need support from our male counterparts that have daughters. Think about how your daughter is being treated in these different positions. Then I think some of the things comes back on us. We have to make ourselves visible. We have to be able to speak up and say the thing. And that takes courage and the release of fear. But once you get past, being scared, I think that is going to help spearhead us a lot. But we got to get support from our own.
Yeah. And you said two of my buzzwords, and my audience knows those are two of my buzzwords. If you listen to my podcast, I use the word courage in almost every episode, and I talk about courage because it's near and dear to my heart, and I had to literally work on that. That was one of the biggest things that catapulted me forward in my life to do the things that I'm doing now. And then fear. Fear is a liar. Fear lies all the time. Fear lies for no reason, no rhyme, no nothing. And I've come to, a middle ground with fear, and we've had several conversations, and I've put fear in its place.
I think there's different iterations of fear too.
Yeah. There's proper fear. There's godly fear. But let me tell you something. That fear that was coming around me, I had to have a whole come to Jesus meeting with them. So, if you could change one thing about how society views women in leadership, what would that be?
That we are sensitive crybabies.
You
Emotional. If I could change how we're viewed.
Oh, how we're viewed. Listen, you corrected me. Thank you for getting me straight on my question. Because I didn't even know what I was asking, okay? Look, you got me straight on my question. I was like, no. Did you say? Yes, that is exactly what I said. Continue.
Yeah, we're like, every woman is not no emotional wreck.
Not at all.
And I'm not, and I was joking about the menopause thing because I'm not even going to go there deeply because that's a whole nother conversation that we must address because it is some issues with, the hormones and the chemical functions in the body. And so, for a long time, people thought that women was just crazy as hell and just, and that's some of the things that women go through at a certain period in their life. Because there are young women that's actually going through some sort of menopausal state as well. We have to make sure we keep that in mind too. But, menopause, and it is that, again, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, and we're going to have definitely a session on that. We have that coming up in the near future. But continue.
I just think that we are emotional beings and that we are not capable of making the right decisions when things are tough and hot and you have to make them, because a lot of times we are not emotional when we have to make these tough decisions like that. We are in these leadership space, we're business minded women. And so if that's one thing I could change, it would be the perception that we're just emotional all the time and we're crazy.
Right. But just to expound on that, just to give some education to any man that may be listening. So we are built to wear many hats within our personal space, and we cook, we clean, and we could probably do 10 things at once. And men know that, So why is it that even in that space we're able to do this and not be affected by our emotions within our households? Right? Because we got to get it done. And if we was emotional, we wouldn't be able to get any of that stuff done. We help our kids with homework. We help them with leading them around the things that they need to be focused on. We even help our husbands around being focused, But then when it comes to being in corporate, we're told that we don't possess the intelligence or we don't possess what's needed in order to make decisions because we're too emotional. And I don't think that that's a good perception or a good, answer to that. I think that that is something that they lean on because they feel like it eliminates us out of the sandbox. It kicks us out of there. And so as a just a add on to what you were saying, I think that that is the wrong perception. And I think that that's something that society needs to look into. As men educate themselves a little bit more, if they care to educate themselves on why women are reacting to things from a more of an emotional standpoint when they are going through those things like menopause, perimenopause in life, we're still trying to understand that. So it just there was just no education around that until recent.
Yeah, and statistically, there are a lot more women leader, highly educated Black women in 2025.
Absolutely.
It is a lot.
Like the tables I would agree.
Changed.
I would agree.
And even over white women.
Right. And I think the one thing, if I have to say anything negatively about that, is we need to be aware of our balance within how we deal with people, because the impression that we leave on people is what speaks volumes about who we are. Because every Black woman that does or says something negatively or acts out, it reflects all of us. So I think that we need to be more conscious of that. So this brings us to our last question. Thank you for hanging in there with me. Yes. So my last question is, what advice would you give young women aspiring toward leadership roles?
Just do it.
Okay. Just
do it. And do whatever you have to do to control fear. I just have to go back on fear. I think it can tear you apart, and it can keep you out of rooms that you actually probably should be in. Hone into your craft and know and surround yourself around people who are already at that level.
That's a good one. Yeah, I would say that's great advice, because and if you have any other thoughts, but I would say that's good advice, because when I was younger, I would always think about, if I only had someone to tell me how to do this. Because my mother wasn't in corporate. So I was in corporate from a very young age. So I worked in corporate environments. As a young person, I worked in the summertime in city offices, government offices. So I saw things early on, and now at the age that I am now, I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. I know what this is. I know the answer to that. I know how to respond to that. But as a young person, you don't know that. I always wish that I had someone to tell me that. So the reason I ask that question is because a lot of times you don't know what to ask or what to think about or what to do, because you haven't had that scenario yet. So if you as a leader can give a person that scenario, or give them ideas of, okay, you're going to have this fear, something you need to think about.
And to me it's situational. Like, I don't think I can say, all you young people do this. It's really based on the situation, because what I'm telling a 20-year-old may be different than what I'm telling a 40-year-old.
Absolutely.
That's now getting into leadership.
Because of where they are mentally.
Exactly. Or not just mentally, or just their experience. You know what I mean? If you would think, there's some 25-year-olds that has done just as much as a 40-year-old.
Right.
But then, if you are a 25-year-old and you're just now getting into your career and you're automatically saying, I want to be a leader, then I would tell you certain steps to take to get there. And it could be based on, whatever industry you're in or what have you, but you still need to hone your craft. Because once you get into this leadership role, you would need to know how to orchestrate the orchestra. So today, I agree with that. And I'm going to add on to that. Today, they are appointing very young leaders. Absolutely. Who I feel might not be ready for something like that. But unfortunately, I have reported up to people that were 10 years or so younger than me. And that it wasn't uncomfortable, because if you know what you're doing, I can follow and lead. But my apprehension with people being in that role is their emotional intelligence and being able to manage people of all ages. Because if you have a team, you're going to have older people, you're going to have younger people. So that's always my issue, not being ready. Because there are certain core things
that you're going to run into, and they're blanket. They're not. They're just, you know, you need to treat people this way. You need to, and you can't say, oh, I can relate to this person because they're younger. And then you get this older person and it's like, I can't relate to them because they don't know. You have to, it's profession, it's business. Mm-hmm. And so that's what, I had a younger boss in my last situation, and it wasn't hard. He just wasn't consistent. And whereas I had been in corporate and I had understood consistency, he didn't. Mm-hmm. And so that's where you can.
And I've seen that, and I have seen that. There's a certain level of maturity to understand how to manage other people. Like maybe not managing the processes or the work at hand, but managing other people. There is a rare case where I've seen somebody who was really young, but I swear this lady had an old soul. It's almost like she had been here before. I never forget her. And it's funny, I just saw her on LinkedIn and she's still doing things. I'm telling you, at a young age, and she continued to drive, and she continued to find ways to evolve herself. So she stayed true to that, and seeing her now, I'm just, you know, elated to see how much she has grown and what she's doing. Like, I may even reach out to her to see if she want to come do
an opportunity, right?
Right.
Yeah, your reputation precedes you when you do things like that, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because I got several listeners who need this content. They need to be able to understand from a seasoned, polished executive who understands being in corporate America as not only a woman, but a Black woman. So I want to thank you and extend my gratitude for you joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I hope to have you back. We have plenty of other topics that, you know, you probably fit right in. And be able to weigh in a little bit, you know, on those things as well. So I look forward to seeing you on the show again.
Yes. All right. Yes. This was so fun. Yes. I love your show, and thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk It Out and Find Out. We appreciate you spending your time with us. Be sure to subscribe by hitting the follow button or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. We'll be back next week with more great content. See you then.